They say history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme sometimes. And lately, it's sounding a lot like the jackboots of authoritarianism echoing through the halls of America. If you've been paying attention, you've probably heard people toss around the word fascist when talking about Donald Trump. But is it just political hyperbole, or is there real substance to the claim? In this video, I'm going to break it down point by point. We'll walk through 10 specific characteristics of fascism, historically defined, and show how Trump checks each and every box. From the cult of personality to attacks on democracy itself, we're not just talking about unpopular opinions or policies we disagree with. We're talking about dangerous patterns with chilling historical parallels. This is about recognizing when the warning lights are flashing on the dashboard of democracy. Fascism doesn't always come marching in wearing a swastika. Sometimes it wears a red baseball cap and talks about making things great again. So buckle up. This is a reality check you need to hear. And if we ignore it, history has shown us exactly what comes next. So let's get into it. Here are the 10 ways Trump is a fascist. Number 10, weaponizing executive orders. Executive orders are a standard tool for presidents to manage the operations of the federal government. However, under Trump, their use has expanded dramatically, often bypassing Congress to implement significant policy changes unilaterally. For instance, Trump issued executive orders to cut healthcare benefits and is attempting to dismantle the Department of Education, actions that would traditionally require legislative approval. By doing so, he sidestepped the checks and balances designed to prevent any one branch of government from becoming too powerful. This approach undermines the democratic process, concentrating authority in the executive branch and setting a precedent for future overreach. It's a move away from collaborative governance towards unilateral decision-making, eroding the foundational principles of American democracy. Number 9, abusing national emergency declarations. National emergencies grant presidents special powers to address crises. However, Trump's frequent and arguably unnecessary declarations have raised concerns about their misuse. He declared a national emergency at the southern border to expedite mass deportations and fund the construction of a border wall, despite Congress's refusal to allocate funds for this purpose. Similarly, he invoked emergency powers to advance fossil fuel projects, bypassing environmental regulations. These actions suggest a pattern of using emergency declarations not to respond to genuine crises, but to circumvent legislative opposition and push through controversial policies. This exploitation of emergency powers threatens the balance of power and the rule of law. Number 8, exploiting signing statements. Signing statements are written pronouncements issued by the president upon signing a bill into law, often outlining interpretations or concerns. Trump has used them to assert the right to ignore or not enforce certain provisions of laws passed by Congress. By doing so, he effectively grants himself a line item veto, allowing him to cherry pick which parts of legislation to uphold. This practice undermines the legislative branch's authority and disrupts the balance of power established by the Constitution. Such actions erode the integrity of the legislative process and set a dangerous precedent for executive overreach, where the president can unilaterally alter the implementation of laws without congressional consent. Number 7, embracing the Unitary Executive Theory. The Unitary Executive Theory posits that the president holds absolute control over the executive branch. Trump has embraced this concept, asserting authority over independent agencies and dismissing officials who don't align with his agenda. For example, he issued Executive Order 14215, mandating that independent agencies submit significant regulations for White House review and adhere to interpretations of law issued by the president or attorney general. This move effectively brings agencies like the FCC and SEC under direct control of the president, compromising their independence. By consolidating power in this manner, Trump challenges the separation of powers and threatens the autonomy of institutions designed to operate free from political influence. Number 6, militarizing domestic policy. Trump has demonstrated a willingness to deploy military forces for domestic purposes, blurring the line between national defense and internal security. He authorized the deployment of thousands of troops to the U.S.-Mexico border, far exceeding previous administrations' levels, to enforce immigration policies. Additionally, he suggested using the military to suppress protests, raising concerns about the potential for authoritarian control. Utilizing the military in domestic affairs undermines the civil liberties and sets a precedent for using force to address political challenges, a hallmark of authoritarian regimes. Number 5, manipulating intelligence and secrecy. A transparent and trustworthy intelligence community is vital for national security. However, Trump has often dismissed intelligence reports that contradict his narrative and has threatened to declassify information for political gain. By attacking intelligence agencies and manipulating classified information, he compromises the integrity of these institutions and erodes public trust. This undermines informed decision-making and can lead to policies based on misinformation and personal agendas. Such actions not only jeopardize national security, but also reflect a broader pattern of disregarding institutional norms for personal or political advantage. Number 4, defying congressional spending authority. The Constitution grants Congress the power of the purse, controlling federal spending. Trump has challenged this authority by impounding funds, refusing to spend money appropriated by Congress for programs he opposes. For instance, he withdrew billions in funding designed for disaster relief and education, prompting legal challenges. This defiance of congressional authority disrupts the balance of power again and undermines the legislative branch's role in budgetary decisions. By unilaterally controlling federal spending, the executive branch encroaches upon legislative responsibilities, threatening the foundational checks and balances of the U.S. government. Number 3, politicizing the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice is intended to operate independently, upholding the law without political bias. Under Trump, the DOJ has faced accusations of being used to protect political allies and target political opponents. He has publicly criticized federal judges, pressured the DOJ to investigate political adversaries, and intervened in cases involving his associates. These actions compromise the DOJ's independence and erode public confidence in the justice system. Politicizing law enforcement agencies undermines the rule of law and can lead to a system where justice is applied unevenly, favoring those in power, as we can literally see now. One of the things I want to break from the script and just mention is this is exactly what Donald Trump was claiming was happening to him when he had actually broken literal laws, been found guilty in a court of law by a jury of his peers, convicted for 34 felonies. This is exactly what Donald Trump was claiming, that Biden was using the DOJ to target his political opponents. But that wasn't what was happening. Conservatives were doing crimes and being brought to trial for those crimes and claiming persecution, and claiming that the DOJ was being used as as Biden's personal political weapon. However, as soon as Donald Trump got into power, that's exactly what he went and did. He even promised he was going to do that before he got in power. He is using the DOJ as his own political police department. Exactly what everything they said during the campaign against Biden that Biden would do, they are doing. Back to the script. Number 2, undermining the civil service. A professional, nonpartisan civil service is essential for effective governance. Trump has sought to replace career officials with loyalists, often bypassing traditional appointment processes. He has implemented policies to make it easier to fire federal employees and has filled key positions with individuals based on loyalty rather than expertise. We see this all the time with him. This approach threatens the competence and neutrality of the civil service, leading to decisions driven by political allegiances rather than public interest. Undermining the civil service compromises the government's ability to function effectively and fairly, eroding institutional integrity. Number 1, defying oversight and the rule of law. Perhaps most concerning is Trump's pattern of defying oversight mechanisms designed to hold the executive accountable. He has resisted congressional subpoenas, refused to comply with investigations, and disparaged judicial rulings that opposed his actions. This blatant disregard for oversight and the rule of law represents a significant threat to democratic governance. When a president operates without accountability, it sets a dangerous precedent for unchecked executive power, undermining the very foundations of democracy. Donald Trump's actions reflect a consistent pattern of consolidating power, undermining democratic institutions, and disregarding the rule of law. There's no better definition of a domestic threat than Donald Trump. Each of these 10 points illustrates a move away from the principles of checks and balances and transparency and accountability that are essential to a functioning democracy. Now he can pretty much do anything he wants, and it's only going to get worse. We all need to be able to recognize the warning signs of authoritarianism. History has shown us that democracies can erode from within when leaders prioritize personal power over democratic norms. As you can see, Trump is doing all he can to consolidate power as he marches the United States into a full-blown fascist authoritarian dictatorship. Check out my Stop Trump playlist over here and join our mailing list. Linktree links are in the description below. Thank you for your support. Take care.